Of the TBN Israel podcast, and according to foreign press, we have no confirmation, I'm sitting with Yair Pinto. We're not sure about that, but that's what we hear from our sources.
Yeah. I'm here with Mati Shoshani, who is also allegedly undercover doing something, but also not confirmed. No, just joking, Mati. But thanks for another episode of TBN Israel, the podcast.
Yeah, we love
and
doing
today
this.
We're going to talk about undercover agencies, about spies, about the undercover shadow war between Iran and Israel.
Exactly.
A lot to discuss today.
It's a story of James Bond just here in this part of the world. His name isn't James, it's Yaakov.
Yeah. Or
Yaakov Bond.
Eli.
Eli
Helicopter.
Forgot about that.
Yeah, Mati, and when we talk about secret wars, we have to talk about the Mossad, the Shin Bet,
That's right.
and other Israeli secret agencies, spy agencies, and also the IRGC, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards Corps, and other, weapons and militia groups that Iran is using in order to conduct its attacks, its wars against Israel, against the West. So this is what we're going to dive into today.
Today's show is going to have a lot of according to foreign press statements and maybes and ifs.
And Israel did not take responsibility for that, but it really helped us and stuff like that. So guys, we really enjoy bringing you these topics about undercover agencies, about spies. And if you like to receive more content like this one, or stuff that you specifically want to hear about, first of all, please comment. And then you can also subscribe to this YouTube channel, to TBN Israel, and share our content with anyone who wants to know what is happening here in Israel, in this region.
So we're telling this incredible story today. The story of how Israel and specifically the Iranians have been fighting a war in the shadow for years. Well over a decade at this point.
We just got a little bit out of the shadows with the attacks that the Iranians launched against Israel, and then the response attack of Israel against Iran. But now it looks like we're back into the shadows again.
Yeah, and again, there's obviously much more that is unknown than what is known here. Mm-hmm. But here's what we do know. Israel has many enemies in the world.
Yes.
And on the top of that list of our foes and versus friends.
And the friends become enemies very quickly, and the enemies friends for a little bit.
We live in a complex neighborhood.
Yeah.
Anyway, at the top of the list are the Iranians.
Mm-hmm.
And the Iranians have been systematically, for decades at this point, calling for the destruction of Israel. But they've been doing more than just words. They've been acting against Israel. They've been doing so by setting up proxies around us in throughout the Middle East.
Militia groups in Lebanon, in Iraq, in Yemen, and funding these groups, sending them advanced weapons, training, receiving terrorists from Hamas to Iran to train them in how to attack and conduct operations against Israel, how to launch missiles, how to build these missiles and other weapons in the Gaza Strip using, home equipment and your own do-it-yourself be a terrorist for dummies in order to attack Israel. And that's what they've been doing.
Yeah. And Israel hasn't been asleep at the same time. Israel has been, and the stuff that has come out over the last, let's say, 5 years, as far as what we've done operation-wise, especially with our allies, these stories are nothing less than fantastic. Stories of espionage and stories of explosions going off in houses within the capital of the Iranians.
Nuclear scientists being exploded somehow randomly. Nobody claims responsibility, but it's really good and really bad for the Iranian nuclear program.
Yes. And people, again, documents disappearing from warehouses in Tehran.
Appear in Israel with Netanyahu, the prime minister.
Appearing in a press conference in Israel. People disappearing. Chief engineers in the different programs that are related to the Iranian government disappearing, gas stations that stop working,
cyber attacks,
centrifuges that explode, parts that are sold around the world that are faulty parts that blow up inside underground facilities in Iran. This is the material of a well-written James Bond movie. Definitely. I don't just say a James Bond movie because some of them are poorly written. a well-written James Bond film. Crazy stories of espionage.
And when you talk about espionage, usually the name Mossad goes up there because the Mossad is a very, very well known and very capable undercover intelligence agency, Israeli intelligence agency that operates outside of Israel. And then you have the Shin Bet, which is also an intelligence agency that operates within the borders of Israel. So that's kind of the difference between the Mossad and the Shin Bet. to give you an equivalent of that, you have like the CIA that is operating outside of the United States.
Yeah.
And then you have the FBI that operates inside the United States, if I'm not mistaken, the boundaries and the areas of operations.
Yeah, that's similar. Israel, Shabak is counterterrorism. Mossad is clandestine outside of the boundaries of Israel. And Mossad, just to frame this conversation, little is known about these organizations, and there are several other intelligence organizations, that operate out of Israel. Little is known about them. We usually hear about them when things go wrong.
And even when an operation is revealed.
When an operation is revealed, it used to happen far more back in the 60s and 70s. And since then, there's only a handful of stories where you hear about something going terribly wrong. Someone who was assassinated, that we bring that back to life, Khalid Mashal in Jordan, a boat that mysteriously explodes in Italy in some lake last year.
In Europe, like some assassination in Europe and stuff like that were recorded on a surveillance camera and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I think that the reason that these operations are not like reported and that we don't hear a lot about this Mossad is because both sides, like our enemies, don't want to make it public that we were able to operate so deep within their territory or to reach their high-ranking personnel, because it brings a shame to them. And then we don't want to be heard at all, because these agencies are super secretive and nobody wants to talk about what they're doing at all.
Yeah. So let's focus on today's conversation. Today we're taking a deep look at the relationship between Israel and Iran as far as like clandestine or secretive operations go. And let's talk about the agenda of the people at the table. The Iranians have a stated goal and a course of action that they've been following for a long time to gain nuclear capabilities and to bring on the destruction of Israel and then later on the
United
US.
States and the West.
And they've done a lot in the pursuit of those goals. They've spent, I don't know how many billions of dollars, many billions of dollars in building the facilities and the technology and training the people in what's needed to reach nuclear capabilities. They've, of course, stated that's for peaceful reasons, but obviously it's considerably more than that. And they've been doing so around the world with illegal measures, using almost every tool that you can imagine, buying, coercing, stealing, whatever it is to do so.
Converting technologies into being used for nuclear development and stuff like that.
Yeah, and the Iranians have at the same time been equipping terrorist organizations around Israel to try and prevent us from preventing them, basically sort of like to close off our actions and prevent or limit our choices.
Yeah, so just as an example, they've been funding Hamas in the Gaza Strip and Islamic Jihad terrorist organizations in the West Bank, so that Israel will have more trouble on our borders, so that Iran can, focus on this development of nuclear weapons and basically advance their big picture game or the end goal of destroying Israel, America, and the West at large.
Let's talk a bit about what we can say that we know. We know that Israel has taken action actively for many, many years against the Iranian nuclear program. And I'll highlight a couple of the stories. We can sort of go into each one of them at depth. And there are many things, of course, we don't know, but what we do know is nothing less than impressive. We know of an Israeli, an American, and British, and I think several other countries.
Start like a joke. Israeli, an American, and a British, and other countries.
Walk clear into an Iranian nuclear facility. That's the beginning of a lame dad joke. An Iranian scientist, an Israeli Mossadin, and a CIA operative walk into a secretive nuclear facility, and suddenly the facility blows up. Anyway, so to our point, so here's what we know. Israel, the US, the UK, and several others, I believe, were involved in a cyber attack on Iranian nuclear facilities. If I remember correctly, it was called the Stuxnet attack.
Yeah.
It was a malware software that was installed into European manufactured equipment in their nuclear facilities that sat dormant for a very, very long time, several years possibly, and was spread between the different computer systems only to bring them all down, breaking a bunch of them in the process.
Yeah.
This was, again, a secretive attempt to get attack software into their computers. Many such attacks have happened in the years since. During this last war, cyber attacks against the gas stations, against banking systems, against telecommunication.
Let's just explain. People want to go and fill their gas in their cars all over Iran, and they can't, because all the gas systems were hacked by like a cyber virus that prevented Iran from doing that. And that basically freezes the entire population and the entire economy from working. You cannot go to work. You cannot fuel your planes. You cannot fill up your trucks and deliver food for the grocery shops. It shuts down the economy. People think, okay, so they didn't fuel up the gas for 1 day.
Everything stops.
It's huge.
Everything stops.
It's huge, yeah.
That's yet another single example. We've stolen money from the Iranians. We've sold them faulty parts through third-party companies or fourth or fifth-party companies in elaborate schemes to bring them broken parts or malfunctioning parts for their nuclear facilities.
Yeah.
We've done many things on the legal side, but many other secretive things. We've stolen documents and capabilities from them within other countries.
Through like a different country, like basically trucks filled with documents that somehow reached Israel at the end. Yeah. Just imagine that Iran is very far from Israel. It's not like we have a direct highway that we travel on it every day. It was an undercover operation to reach within the nuclear archive of Iran and then extract like trucks filled with equipment, of documents, of CDs, and or other kinds of.
I think one of the funniest press conferences I've ever seen in my life. Netanyahu stands up. It literally looks like a arts and crafts project of an 8th grader. Look what I found, guys! And behind Netanyahu, just to remind everyone of the image, is an entire wall of CDs and like piles of documents. And then no one knew what was going to happen. Yeah. And then he goes on and gives this whole spiel about how Israel stole, it's like a warehouse full of documentation of the Iranian nuclear program. And again, bear in mind, so this interesting combination of the legal and clandestine operations. Yeah. Israel, on the one hand, is publicly trying to stop the Iranians from reaching nuclear capability. And all that time, they're lying. Oh no, this is a peaceful program. Why are you preventing us from making electricity? All we want to do is make electricity with nuclear power.
And then on the back end, the protests are like, kill America, kill Israel.
And then, so Israel produces all the documents, and the documents say, actually, we were lying. This is all for military capabilities.
Yeah, by the way, this all fits our rockets that can reach Israel, that can reach further.
Yeah. So again, we blew the lid off that.
Yeah.
There were other cyber attacks, and again, this is going back and forth. Recently, I'm looking at our producer's notes, 2020, 4 years ago, it says that Iran attempted multiple times, and I remember this now, they tried to attack our water facilities and failed. They attacked...
With a cyber attack.
With cyber attacks. Yeah. They attacked several hospital operating systems and failed. I think one of them was semi-successful in taking over sort of like the...
In Syria?
No, in Israel.
No, but we also had like field hospitals in Syria that Iran attacked.
No, I'm talking about cyber.
Okay.
Cyber, yeah. Even before the actual attacks. Yeah, but yes to what you're saying, is the Iranians actively, physically attack every Israeli they can get their hands on anywhere in the world.
Yeah, it doesn't matter if we're trying to help, Syrians in the civil war or stuff like that. They launched attacks against Israeli field hospitals that were operating in Syria, like right on the border, to assist all the civilian population of Syria that were affected by the Syrian civil war.
Yeah, and then at the same time, so they try to attack some of our water facilities. Suddenly in 2020, a big gas storage facility explodes. They say it's a malfunction. Everyone else says actually it's a cyber attack by the Israelis who caused your station to blow up. There's damage to nuclear facilities.
Of course, nobody claims responsibility for any of these reports, but it's a very interesting pattern. And if you like to watch spy movies, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah. And then here's one of my favorite quotes. 2021, our prime minister with one of my favorite haircuts, Naftali Bennett, he says our policy. If you don't see the picture of him, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, let's put it on the screen next to Mati's head. We'll see.
He has the haircut of a trustworthy and desirable individual. So in 2021, then Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, he says our foreign policy against the Iranians is called a death by 1,000 cuts. And I love that quote. It's so indicative of how we operated against them. More and more and more attacks. And you would say to yourself, well, what does this even get? Like, where does this get us? And I'm trying to remember who it was in the Israeli intelligence organization. Possibly Olmert, our previous prime minister. And I think we've heard timelines about how much damage our clandestine operations caused the Iranians. And it was in years. Because
every time we delay their development ability of a nuclear bomb by years, you mean?
Yeah, so it was someone, I forget the exact number. They were naming like, well, what effect do all these operations have? And, so it'll be like, well, we slow down here, and then the cumulative effect of it is 3 to 5 years in them being able to even enrich uranium.
Or just find and train another scientist that will be willing to join the nuclear program just for fear of his life.
Yeah. And again, so there's endless strikes. And like you said when we opened, oftentimes Israel never claims responsibility. And it's almost funny, like most countries, when they're publicly shamed, won't say, even though they're not admitting, I know who did it. It was him. And the Iranians have done the opposite. They've oftentimes said the attack was done by the Israelis or the Americans. And they do that because they want to openly retaliate.
Yeah, and they also want to have the legitimacy of their people in these attacks. But, okay, so we are also launching, like, undercover attacks, allegedly, against Iran. But also, Israel and the United States are operating in the international arena to impose sanctions and try to somehow, like, diplomatically reduce the chances of a nuclear weapon being developed by Iran.
Yeah, so we mentioned the whole, let's call it the
sanctions.
So the sanctions connect to the exposure of the documentation.
Yes.
The exposure of the documents was done at a time when we won't use all the ridiculous acronyms that were created for this. There were internationally sanctioned organizations that were tasked with surveilling and supervising the Iranian nuclear programs. And the Iranians are very crafty at hiding information and giving partial information. They, as sort of the saying goes about, like the Persians, they love negotiating. So they tired out the international organizations with partial information, and the
nuclear agreement that took years and then until
years of negotiations. And so in the meantime, Israel and the United States and others are trying to provide information to prove that the Iranians are breaking or violating the agreement.
Yes.
And so what is this agreement? And this is where it gets like really expensive for the Iranians. The Israelis are not suffering internationally from this action. The Iranians, when it was proven repeatedly that they're committed to a nuclear military program, a nuclear military program, so they were sanctioned by the international community. And let's explain what sanction means for the Iranians. They're kicked out of the SWIFT system.
So they can't transfer money.
Exactly. What is the SWIFT system? Anytime you want to move money between countries, you need to use this American-controlled banking system. And it sort of what gives the codes between the banks.
And there's a record.
There's a record of the transactions. The Iranians were kicked out of the system by the sanctions. Most American countries, most European countries are not allowed to trade with the Iranians. They can't get parts for their cars, their helicopters, their engines, their generators, nothing. And they're limited in buying chips, computer chips, not the edible kind.
Maybe so.
Unless you're a robot. But so they...
and also more than that, let's just think about the day-to-day. Let's say, I think that Peugeot had a huge company of manufacturing
subsidiary,
cars. In Iran.
Yeah.
So that company was shut down because of the sanctions. So many Iranians don't have a job anymore.
Yeah.
So it has direct effects on the Iranian economy, which is already very poor and suffering because the government of Iran is investing all the money in developing terrorism in the Middle East and around the world.
Exactly. And then, so to add to insult to injury, it also freezes the assets of the Iranians. It freezes the bank accounts of international Iranian companies. It prevents, the sale of Iranian goods in other countries. It does many, many things that cripple the Iranian economy. And so even though they're openly fighting Israel, they fought tooth and nail to prevent the sanctions, and they fought very, very hard to remove the sanctions, because it hurt them considerably.
Definitely. Because now that, every sanction that is lifted gives them more money.
Yeah.
Because they have also offshore bank accounts that have millions of dollars under private people, so to speak. And these people and these accounts were also frozen. And now that they're released, a lot of money can flow freely into other organizations such as Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis in Yemen. And they have many people that need money in order to keep going and to keep fighting this war.
Yeah.
Not directly, but indirectly, which also harms us a lot.
Yeah. And so we talked about cyber attacks. There have been many cyber attacks between Israel and the Iranians, but there have also been physical attacks. The Iranians, as you mentioned previously, they have people around us. They have Hezbollah, they have rebel forces, depending on the season in this part of the world, that are in Syria, in Lebanon, in both, whatever. And whatever opportunity they have, they attack. But they also try to apprehend and kidnap or kill Israeli citizens or Jews outside of Israel. Several years back, the Turkish and Israeli intelligence stopped a terrorist cell within Turkey that was planning to kidnap Israeli citizens. I think it happened more than once.
Also, I think also in South America, there was an attack in the
Jewish community.
In the Jewish community.
That was a long time ago, though.
Yeah. Anyway, but I think that all of this, all of these shadow wars are happening now because, as we said before, Iran do not have a nuclear weapon yet. And Israel, according to foreign reports, and allegedly has a nuclear weapon.
Well, according to the Iranians. The Iranians have publicly said many times.
We're going to attack the nuclear facilities of Israel.
Not just that. So it's a double standard. Why do you prevent us from having nuclear capabilities when the Zionist devil has, these are their words, of course, has nuclear capabilities?
Exactly. So at the moment, it's like we have the ability, they do not have the ability. So they cannot afford to open a full-scale open war against us because we have an edge on them.
They've come pretty close.
Yes.
They heavily finance Hezbollah. They heavily finance Hamas.
So that's why they use these proxies. Because of that. Just imagine what will happen once they reach the nuclear threshold or pass it and have a few nuclear payloads that can be launched towards Israel. So that will change the game in the Middle East completely.
Let's talk a bit about the people that are involved in this on a personal level. Prime Minister Netanyahu, who's been in sort of the helm of Israel since I was a kid, and give or take, he's for years. He was becoming. It almost seemed like he was obsessive.
Every speech,
Iran.
Iran. When they reach this, we will do that.
They must be stopped, and it almost became an international joke because he would go with this little.
This is the bomb.
His little infographics every time he'd speak at the UN General Assembly, and this and that. Look, we found the documents, and he'd wave them, and it was almost like the crazy old man who's constantly waving
constantly saying the same thing, and nobody believes him.
And eventually, people sort of came around to the idea, wait a minute, there actually is a legit problem here. They imposed sanctions, and at a certain point, I'm trying to think which American, maybe it was Obama administration, said to the Israeli administration, your efforts are not helping us because while the negotiations were taking on wherever it was in Europe, the Israeli government and Netanyahu kept speaking against the sanctions, against the international committee that was auditing the Iranian nuclear plan. And Netanyahu, he really was the flag bearer for this battle Iran. The Iran is the great evil of our time. And according to the Israeli government official releases, we've spent many billions of dollars preparing for the day we will have to face Iran. We've spent many billions of dollars in preventing Iran.
Or delaying that day.
It
looks like it's inevitable that they will reach a nuclear weapon sooner rather than later.
I don't know. We've seen such a rise in the number of assassinations in recent months.
But they must keep developing it.
I'm sure they do.
In a slow pace, but it will happen. And I'm sure that they are not stupid. I'm sure that they have parts in certain areas, and if they combine them together, they can get a bomb. But also, now there is the game of numbers. How many bombs do you need in order to openly say that you have a bomb? Because if you only have one bomb, it's different than having 200 or 300. If you're not a superpower, if you only have one nuclear bomb. So I think that even if they potentially have already now a nuclear weapon, they might have maybe several of them. Then the other part is how can they successfully launch these weapons towards their enemies, if it's Israel, if it's the United States, because so they have a weapon in Iran somewhere. It's not like they're going to transport it in a briefcase. You need a missile, and that missile needs to be able to reach. It needs to be accurate. It needs to survive the anti-rocket defense systems. It needs not to explode in Iran, which we've seen that many of their missiles exploded, as they fired them at us.
So they have a large accident rate with their intercontinental ballistic missiles. Here's something I think to say in I don't want to say the defense, but the benefit of the Iranians. They're not a force to be disregarded. They've been very, very, very wise, very conniving about getting the nuclear capability they need. Yep. And at the same time as they're trying to run the centrifuges to enrich uranium, they're trying to buy ready-made bombs from the South Koreans. At the same time as they're trying to purchase the technology or train the scientists or run the experiments, they're trying to bring in those scientists from other countries. Yeah. They're firing on all barrels, all the, and
definitely.
What is the expression? All pistons, all cylinders. They're firing with whatever they can all the time. They're trying to get a bomb as fast as they can because to them it's a thing of international prestige and a thing of a point of leverage against Israel and the West. And that's in part the reason that Israel isn't alone in this battle. And according to what we've heard in international press, many of these attempts, both the assassinations of scientists and the attacks on different facilities, have been facilitated not only by Israeli intelligence organizations, but a combination of Israeli, American, and others.
Yes, definitely. Also, Europeans and other Western allies that we have that have the same agenda that Iran will not acquire nuclear weapons capabilities. Because it is scary. I mean, if they have a nuclear bomb and they keep saying that they want to destroy Israel, we should start believing them. I mean, the world. I think that we believe already.
I think our government believes them. And here, let me introduce a different funny thought. Our government's using terrorism against the Iranians. And what do I mean by that? We always call them a terrorist organization because of the Hezbollah and what they've been doing in this region. But from a perspective of a Iranian scientist with a PhD in anything that has to do with nuclear bombs or physics or rockets or anything like that, we're very much an active terrorist organization. And I don't say this jokingly. Some of the targeted attacks against Iranian high-level dignitaries or chief scientists in their different programs, some of these things have been out of a Hollywood film. Yeah. Not only that, they've been so finely crafted. If someone presented a script of this to someone else, it would say no one would believe this happened.
Definitely.
Case in point, one of the recent assassinations a couple of years ago was a car that, according to the Iranians, we don't know what the Israeli government is saying. Yeah. According to the Iranians, the Israeli government or the Mossad hired locals who were from a opposition faction within Iran, and those locals left a car in the route of a parade. You remember this story?
No.
If they left a car in the route of a parade or the driving route of one of the drivers, and inside the car was a remotely controlled rifle with a fire system.
Really?
Yeah, and it shot a guy. I forget what the guy's title was. It was one of the chief scientists for whatever program it was, but it was in the middle of a city, in the middle of a day,
in the middle of a parade.
I don't even know. It wasn't a parade. It was in the middle of traffic or something like that. Okay. And that's sort of the highly crafted ones. There were countless events where someone gets into his car in the morning and a scooter goes by, and someone fires at him from the scooter and he's found dead in his car.
Yeah.
Or worse. Unalived in his car. Unalived in his car. I'll say that for our editors.
For our YouTube
audience. And anyway, so there's a lot of that going on for a very, very long time. And from the Iranians' perspective, this is publicly humiliating. Just imagine showing up to the office on Sunday and where's Ahmed? Don't ask. Don't ask. Ahmed was, he was picked off by, and they'll say Mossad.
Yeah.
They don't. Where is he? We don't know. What happened to him? We don't know. How did they get to him? We don't know. Imagine the level of fear that plants in the hearts of people. Yeah. And the Mossad and the Americans have been very successful at punching holes through the sort of the shroud of secrecy around the Iranian nuclear program, and reaching people who no one's supposed to know about. Scientists who thought they were protected by their credentials, by the organization they're part of, by secrecy, by not being publicly facing individuals. They're gone again and again for years. So we've spent who knows how much, but we've spent a lot in resources. We've spent a lot of energy in really monitoring what's happening in Iran.
Yeah, and I wonder what will be the next steps, because Iran is at a point that the leadership will completely change. Okay, so the president of Iran just unalived himself in a plane crash.
I don't know if
I don't know himself or like
it wasn't intentional.
Yeah, and so his helicopter crashed, which is also might be a result.
The polite way to say it is that they had a very rapid landing into a mountainside.
Yes, directly into the mountain.
Yeah,
and so Iran is like in a shifting period, and the supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is above 80 years old.
Yeah,
so Iran is about to change into a new era, a new leadership, a new maybe it will change a bit the ideology, but not necessarily, because Iranians are really good at planning ahead, planning very long term, and they've been preparing the entire system, and the IRGC and the entire Revolutionary Guard has been preparing for decades to go, for this battle to continue for many, many, many years to go. Unlike us in the West, that we see 4-year term.
One election cycle at best.
Exactly. At the worst, at the best, like 4 years maximum, no more than that.
Yeah.
So I think this is something that they have an advantage on us. They are playing the long game, and we are playing the narrow-sighted game. We're getting better at it because we get fast results.
Yeah.
But if you're talking about a population of 100 million people in Iran, and I'm sure that not all of them support the regime. I know that we have actually viewers that
write us from Iran.
That write, and they pray for Israel, and they stand with the IDF and the Jewish people. And thank you for that, by the way. It really is encouraging and gives us like tailwind to keep doing this. To know that not everybody in Iran hates Israel and supports these cherished regimes. But the future is not so clear and not so straightforward. We don't know what will happen in the next 5 years, that the regime will change its face. And I'm sure the new powers will have to prove that they are strong against Israel, that they are strong internally against their own people and against any kind of opposition. So Iran that we know now might change drastically within the next 5 years. And I think that Israeli defense agencies, the Mossad, and other undercover agencies should really, pay attention and be on top of all these changes. Also, maybe to decide who will be the successor. And by terminating the bad opponents.
So I asked the same question to Mordechai Kedar in a recent episode of In Our Neighborhood, and he said something very interesting to me. He says that the only way to really change the regime in Iran is to have the people overthrow the government. From within, to promote democracy. And he said, and I said, well, they've tried. I said, yeah, but there is a way where the West aids or other countries aid them in overthrowing the government. And it's happened in the past, in Iran specifically. And Israel and the United States were involved in it. It's happened in the past.
It's also happening in multiple places around the world. It's
exactly.
Not a new thing to influence and assist a group that wants democracy.
Exactly. Here's the pattern he identifies. He says, look, the cycles of revolution in Iran internally are getting shorter and shorter. The level of counter-government protests gets shorter and shorter.
The more and more counter-government protests.
It happens more often and stronger.
So the people are ready for a change.
And the level of violence that the government needs to use to stop it becomes greater and greater. Mm-hmm. So if that continues, that trend continues, it's going to bring their government to the breaking point. And it needs to, because if you think about the suffering their people have experienced because of that, fundamentalist religious regime, they've suffered terribly on every possible level. Mm-hmm. Every possible level. And their people deserve better than that.
Yeah, definitely. Let's just talk about numbers. Iran is providing $700 million every year, $700 million to Hezbollah, terrorist organization. Imagine, the people in Iran that don't have food to eat, that are suffering from droughts and other, economic situations. Yeah. And the government is funding this terrorist organization that is miles and miles and miles away from Iran. And to what end? Just to attack the Jewish state that none of them in a day-to-day life care about. They just want to eat, feed their family, and work.
Let me speculate something. Let's take 2 minutes to speculate. What else could Israel and the United States and others be doing to topple the government in Iran? And if I look into the past, you remember it was called, I think, I forgot what the name was in English, the Third Circle Doctrine by Israel, where back in the 50s, 60s-ish, Israel was supporting the enemy of my enemy. You know the saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend.
Yeah.
So Israel did that actively. We did it with the Kurds and the Iraqis. We aided the Kurds against the Iraqis. We did it with the South Sudanese, which didn't exist back then. It was just a southern region of Sudan.
Yeah.
We helped them form a militia to fight the North Sudanese to prevent them from aiding the Egyptians. And we did it in several other places. And people remember us favorably because of that. When I visited in Kurdistan, people loved the Israelis because of that, because they remember that we aided them. Now, we did really aid them, but it also was done for not a really altruistic goal. It was done to be a thorn in the flesh of the Iraqis.
Yeah, you need to pick a side and put your money or your coins on that side.
If we guesstimate based on that, and the fact that many countries do this around the world, one would say that there's a high likelihood that the same is being done to the Iranians today. In the same way that they're trying to destabilize every minority group, every opposition group, every terrorism group that's trying to hurt the Iranian government, probably has some kind of influence from one or another of like an international anti-Iranian intelligence organization.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So what, you think that the Abraham Accords and basically all the anti-Iran coalition that we saw that united when Iran attacked Israel can be part of that? So Israel is like putting a lot of money, political investment together with the United States in creating these coalitions with Saudi Arabia, with other anti-Iran forces in this region.
Yeah, but I mean, you could also say that in the same way that the victims of Islamic terrorism are mostly Muslims, the victims are the Iranians are the Iranians and their neighbors. The Iranians themselves and their neighbors.
Yeah, the victims of Hamas, the majority of the victims of Hamas are Palestinians in the Gaza Strip.
Exactly. Easy. So we're not the only ones who identify the Iranians as a problem. Everyone in their neighborhood clearly identifies them as a hugely problematic force that needs to be dealt with.
Including their own people, for sure.
So their own people are limited in their tools of like fighting against their own government. But if you look at the Emiratis who joined forces with us, if you look at the Saudis who've gone deep in negotiations, these people are open enemies of the Iranians. The Iranians, remember this, prior to this recent attack on Israel, the Iranians never attacked Israel directly. You know who they did attack? The Saudis. They blew up a Saudi oil field with Houthi drones, quote unquote, air quotes.
Developed and designed and purchased by Iran.
Developed, designed, manufactured, and trained in Iran. Not very Houthi in its essence. So they're fighting in their own region. They're destabilizing their own region. Every faction, every force recognizes them as a destabilizing force, and whether they like them or not, they don't want them expanding their power.
Yes.
And so these other countries had an agenda to join forces with Israel, but specifically Israel backed by the United States.
But let's go back into Iran. So let's say Israel wants to topple the Iranian government from within. What's the next steps? How do we do it?
You strengthen the opposition forces.
So we find like a good popular, kind of Iranian rebel that is calling for democracy and he's trying to topple the government, that he's still alive and not in jail in Iran. Right? And what? Then you strengthen him with means and stuff like that.
Maybe there's a longer term plan to destabilize the government from within. Maybe you assassinate people that are in the way of that. Maybe it's just a longer game where it's instability until the point where revolution can happen. Because
just instability, and then the people themselves will rise up.
Yeah, maybe it's intelligence sharing with the neighbors of Iran. There's a lot of things you can do to weaken a country, and all of that is outside of the open communication channel we have with the international community, trying to impose sanctions on them, trying to hurt them internationally, trying to shame countries that trade with the Iranians. And there's a lot of that happening. Oftentimes you'll hear news snippets of countries making accusations based on Israeli intel or American intel, saying that so-and-so country traded with the Iranians against the sanctions, or the information is leaked through some organization to some government to punish that company or government agency that violated the sanctions. So there's a lot of that going on. I don't think it's going to stop anytime soon.
No, I think that we'll have a few more rounds, and especially after the Iranian attack against Israel and the retaliatory attack against Iran. I think that now we're deeply back into the shadow games and the shadow wars. And especially now with the upcoming war on Israel's northern border with Lebanon, Iran is heavily invested in basically financing its proxies in this region.
Look,
and at the same time, I think that if the world's focus is on Iran, on Hezbollah, on Hamas, in Gaza, in Israel, then that gives them more time to develop their nuclear facilities.
Yeah, 100%.
So,
look, if either of us was in the role of whoever the Iranian government official is who's supposed to finance terrorism in the Middle East, if I was that person, if you were that person, now is the time I'd be flooding the region with money.
Yeah,
whoever can give me intel, whoever can find me some Jews to harm.
Whoever is willing to hide some weapons in his basement or transport.
Here's cash.
Yeah,
and vice versa too. Israel now has the agenda. Israel now has the sort of the push to do the same thing, as do the allies of Israel.
Yeah.
As do the Saudis, as does UAE, as does Kuwait.
Because all the eyes are focused on this conflict,
yeah.
So our intelligence agencies can think 3 steps ahead and do other things.
But also, I mean, like figuratively speaking, people have taken off the gloves in this region. Things are a lot more open in, let's say, the last 12 months than they were for a very long time. Mm-hmm. And sort of the alliances are clear. The exchanges of blame are much more clear and in the open than they used to be. If I'm the Israeli government and I'm trying to get intelligence, I'm trying to harm Iranian agendas in this region, I'm pulling off all the stops.
Yeah.
I'm paying what I need to pay. I'm buying what I need to buy.
Sending whoever needs to be sent.
I'm coercing whoever I need to coerce, and I'm recruiting people wherever I can recruit them. Mm-hmm. And other countries are doing the same. So I don't think we're going to see a diminishing of the level of conflict. On the contrary.
It's more complex.
Yeah, much more complex, much more volatile. Mm-hmm. Whatever cyber attacks happened in the past small are going to happen big.
Yeah,
whatever mysterious explosions happened in the past will happen even bigger this time around. Until whatever point of escalation we hit. Who knows?
Yeah, definitely who knows. But listen, it's never boring in the Middle East. I mean, we keep saying that this region has effects on all of the world.
100%.
And it does.
It does.
I mean, we keep talking about Mossad, CIA, Shabak, sanctions. It's all affecting the world's economy. Even the Houthis, that we don't consider them as a great military threat, but they are. They are affecting the world. They are affecting the maritime shipments of goods between the East and Europe and the West. And it affects our pockets personally. And because of that, everybody has to get involved also militarily.
I think this is a good opportunity to ask our audience to pray for us and to keep watching. And I'll say this to my camera. I hope this is the right one this time. I'll say it to the camera behind Yael's shoulder. We deeply care about you watching this content and sharing this content. So we want to ask you for 2 quick things. Continue to pray for what happens in this part of the world. Continue to pray for Jerusalem, for Israel, for the people of God in this land. And continue watching and sharing the content that is created here so people around the world can hear the truth about what's happening in Israel.
Okay, so we talked about going to naval vessels of the IDF and traveling and showing you actually the technologies that Israel develops in order to defend itself. The IDF, the Navy, the Air Force. And in order to do so, we need your help. We need your help by supporting this channel by donating, either by clicking the donate button or by going to our website at www.tbn.org/Israel. Iran just launched a digital clock that is basically a timer for when Israel will be destroyed.
I'm not afraid.
and they state that by 2040, Israel will be destroyed and wiped out.
I disagree strongly.
Yeah.
I think the Word of God tells us, and God has been faithful, and the trend is we're going to be here and we're going to be successful, we're going to be prosperous, we're going to be healthy, we're going to be strong in this land much more than they are going to.
Oh, definitely. And if you're wondering, which side to support in this war, I think that
I don't think they're watching this channel if they're debating who to support. Yeah.
I don't know, listen. Maybe you should tell your friends. The best bet, if you are a betting man, is to put your money with God, and God is with Israel, especially in this war. And I think that every day that goes on in this war, we see more and more miracles on a personal level, on a national level.
Yes.
We see God's hand in each and every action that is being happening here. And to me, Mati, this is super encouraging. On a personal level, on a relationship level with God, I feel more and more confident in Him than I was before the 7th of October.
Yeah.
I believe we're serving an amazing God, and he has the control, and he has the big picture, and he knows what will happen. We need to do the next step, to be faithful in what God wants us to do tomorrow, today, and then, everything will come together. Won't be easy, but...
no one ever said it would be easy.
Yeah.
Nothing worthwhile ever is.
Definitely.
Yeah, this has been fun.
Yeah.
Let's do it again, maybe once a week.
Maybe next week, we'll see.
Maybe next week you have long pants.
I don't count on next week, but maybe 2 weeks from now, yeah.
Awesome.
Well, thanks, Mati.
Thanks, Yael.
And thank you for watching TBN Israel, the podcast. Please subscribe to receive daily videos from Israel, from this region, explaining what is happening and how best you can pray for the situation. And don't forget to pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at TBN.